Hello and welcome back. Our topic for this video, we're going to continue talking about cells, but what we're going to focus on now is going to be cell size and some characteristics associated with our two classification of cells, with prokaryotic cells versus eukaryotic cells. With cells now, size is going to matter, okay? And with cells, it's actually true that smaller is going to be better. And we're going to talk a little bit about why with cells, smaller is better. And the short answer to that gets to the cell membrane, all right, the phospholipid bilayer that surrounds the cell. Because if I draw, and I'm going to use boxes here just because it's a little easier to depict in the slide I have in the PowerPoints. Kind of shows you some square cells. All right, oh, and that's squeaky. I apologize for the squeaky marker. But if you measure the size here, okay, you're going to come up with some surface area associated with the small cell. You'll come up with some surface area with the large cell. But what's key here is the ratio between the volume of what's inside the cell and the surface area here is going to be more efficient for the exchange of materials than it will be for our larger cell, because we have a larger interior volume, but we don't have a subsequent increase relative to the smaller cell in the surface area. So we've got a different ratio of volume to surface area. And that's going to be what's important. So if we take this in terms of something that we've already talked a little bit about, and our prokaryotic cell is our small cell, our eukaryotic cell is our large cell, all right? The prokaryotic cell is actually much more efficient at transporting what it needs across its cell membrane, because relative to the volume inside, it's got a greater surface area. Whereas the eukaryotic cell has a larger volume inside, but a smaller amount of surface area. So it doesn't have as much contact with the environment to exchange materials. So really what it gets at here is that cell membrane and the exchange of materials. So the eukaryotic cell has actually over time adapted in order to be able to address that increase in volume but decrease in surface area of the cell membrane. And what that eukaryotic cell has done, all right, is it has included membranes now inside of the cell. So we have, with our eukaryotic cell, and again, I'm going to draw them as boxes. I know organelles are not box-shaped. This is just kind of to illustrate the point now that eukaryotic cells can function because of the organelles that are contained within the cell. Because what makes an organelle classified as an organelle, it has to have a plasma membrane and be surrounded by a plasma membrane. So in the next couple videos that you're going to watch, I'm going to talk about some specific organelles, and what classifies them as organelles is the plasma membrane. There are some other cellular structures that are kind of put in with the organelles in your textbook. They don't have a cell membrane, so they wouldn't be considered an organelle. And those are going to be things I'll point out in the next couple sets of videos, all right? But what we're going to kind of go over first now with our two types of cells, whether we're talking prokaryotic and whether we're talking eukaryotic There are going to be some components that are the same between both cells. So both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells are going to have a cell membrane. They're going to have cytoplasm. That's that gooey stuff inside. All right. Both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells are going to have genetic material, so they're going to have DNA. And the other structure that both have, ribosomes, is going to be ribosomes. Okay? Those ribosomes are one of the examples that we're going to talk about when we talk about organelles. Ribosomes aren't an organelle. Ribosomes are made up of RNA and protein. They don't have a plasma membrane associated with them. So they're found in both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Those ribosomes are important because they're important in making proteins. And that's going to be another topic we'll get to a little later in the semester. But with our prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, these are going to be some of the things that are the same between them. Okay? Our prokaryotic cells typically are going to be smaller than our eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are on the range of typically 1, maybe as large as 5 micrometers. All right. Eukaryotic cells are going to be larger. They can range anywhere from 10 to 50, maybe 100 micrometers in size. All right, so you're still going to need a microscope to see both. They're still both considered small, but eukaryotic cells relative to prokaryotic cells are larger. All right. Eukaryotic cells also are going to contain organelles, and that's going to be one of the big differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. All right. And the advantage that eukaryotic cell has, the organelles work to compartmentalize, or what I drew here, essentially work to increase the surface area by essentially surrounding portions inside the cell with plasma membrane for a particular function. Okay, and that's what the organelles are going to do. All right, so those are some of the similarities. These are going to be some of our differences. And one of the other things I want to make sure to point out, prokaryotic cells are going to have a cell wall, meaning they're going to have, essentially, if we draw this here, this is going to be our cell membrane. And then let me use pink so that you can see the color difference. Then around the outside of it, we're going to have a cell wall. And that cell wall in prokaryotic cells is made up of peptidoglycan. So it's made up of proteins and sugars, and that gives some structure to the prokaryotic cell. All right? There are some eukaryotic cells that have cell walls. Our eukaryotic cell that has a cell wall are going to entirely be plant cells. Okay? So plant cells will also have a cell wall. It's going to be a little bit different. You're still going to have, and I'll draw it here, this is still going to be our cell membrane with our plant cell. And then you're going to have a rigid cell wall that surrounds the cell membrane as well. But what the components that make up the cell wall of a plant cell versus a prokaryotic cell are very different. The plant cell wall is going to be composed of cellulose. All right, So it's a different material, kind of has the same function though, gives some structure to the plant cells as well. All right, so I'm going to stop here with this video. Next video, we are going to talk about specifically the different organelles within a eukaryotic cell. And because this is health science majors, I'm going to focus primarily on animal cells. Okay? I will point out some of the differences that are going to be found in plant cells though. If you have any questions, please let me know.